The studio lights were warm, almost comforting, as Morgan Freeman settled into his chair on the Good Morning America set, their glow reflecting softly off the polished floor and the familiar skyline backdrop. The hum of quiet chatter from the audience blended with the low murmur of crew members counting down to air. Freeman adjusted his jacket with an easy confidence, the kind that came from decades of interviews, stages, and sets far more intimidating than a morning talk show. To most watching, this was just another guest appearance, an icon stopping by to promote a project, share a few anecdotes, maybe offer a gentle laugh before heading on his way. But beneath the surface, something felt slightly off, like a note just out of tune. George Stephanopoulos greeted him with his practiced warmth, the smile of a man who had navigated presidents, scandals, and breaking news with equal composure. Their opening exchange flowed smoothly enough. Freeman's voice rolled through the studio, rich and steady, drawing the audience in the way it always did. People leaned forward without realizing it, hanging on each word. The first few questions were safe: career reflections, lessons learned, the passage of time. Freeman answered thoughtfully, occasionally smiling, occasionally pausing as if weighing not just his words, but their meaning. Then the conversation shifted. It wasn't abrupt, not obviously confrontational. It came disguised as curiosity, framed carefully, the way experienced interviewers know how to push without seeming to push. Stephanopoulos asked about responsibility, about influence, about public figures and the expectations placed upon them in a divided world. Freeman listened, nodding slowly, his expression neutral. When he answered, his tone remained calm, but there was a subtle firmness to it, an edge that hadn't been there moments before. He spoke about nuance, about the danger of simplifying complex issues, about how easily conversations could become performances rather than truths. The audience responded with polite laughter at first, then silence as the words sank in. Stephanopoulos followed up, gently at first, reframing the question, pressing for clarity. Freeman's eyes flicked briefly toward the host, then back to the camera. He took a breath, the kind that signals patience wearing thin, and responded again, still controlled, still articulate, but unmistakably more personal. He spoke of being tired of soundbites, of being invited to talk only to be steered toward conclusions already decided. Somewhere off camera, a producer shifted in their seat. As the exchange continued, the rhythm changed. The usual give and take of morning television tightened into something more deliberate. Stephanopoulos maintained his composure, but his questions came faster now, more pointed. Freeman leaned forward slightly, hands resting on his knees, his voice lowering just enough to command attention. The warmth of the lights seemed to fade, replaced by a quiet tension that crept across the set. Audience members glanced at one another, unsure whether they were witnessing an honest debate or the slow unraveling of a carefully planned segment. Freeman spoke about respect, not just for differing opinions, but for the space to express them without being cornered. He wasn't raising his voice. He didn't need to. Each word landed with weight, carried by decades of authority and lived experience. Stephanopoulos attempted to steer the conversation back, offering a diplomatic bridge, but Freeman didn't cross it. Instead, he paused, letting the silence stretch. In live television, silence is dangerous. Everyone in the room felt it. Behind the cameras, hands hovered over switches, ready to cut away if needed. The director whispered urgently into a headset. Freeman straightened in his chair, his expression now resolute rather than reflective. He finished his thought with a sentence that felt less like an answer and more like a boundary being drawn. The audience didn't applaud. They didn't laugh. They simply watched, aware they were witnessing something unscripted, something that couldn't be easily smoothed over. Stephanopoulos nodded, offering a measured response, but the moment had shifted beyond polite recovery. Freeman glanced around the studio, as if taking it all in, the lights, the faces, the familiar machinery of television, and for a brief instant, there was a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Not anger, not regret, just the quiet recognition that the conversation had reached a place it was never meant to go. The silence lingered longer than anyone expected, stretching across the studio like a held breath. Stephanopoulos tried to regain the rhythm, offering a careful segue, his tone measured and conciliatory, but the energy had shifted irreversibly. Morgan Freeman didn't interrupt him. He listened, nodding once, slowly, as if acknowledging the effort. When Stephanopoulos finished, Freeman placed his hands on the armrests of his chair and rose to his feet with deliberate calm. The soft scrape of the chair against the floor cut through the quiet, a small sound that somehow felt thunderous in the moment. Freeman spoke again, his voice low, even, but unmistakably final. He talked about dignity, about conversations that should illuminate rather than corner, and about knowing when a line, unspoken but deeply felt, had been crossed. There was no accusation in his words, no raised voice or sharp gesture. That restraint made them heavier. A few audience members shifted uncomfortably, others stared, wide-eyed, sensing history unfolding in real time. Stephanopoulos stood as well, his expression a blend of professionalism and surprise, hands slightly raised as if to slow the moment down. Before anything else could be said, a producer stepped into frame from the edge of the set, murmuring something just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Freeman nodded once in response. He didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. He simply turned and began walking toward the exit, past the cameras, past the stunned crew members who instinctively parted to make room. The cameras cut abruptly to a wide shot, then to commercial, the bright jingle clashing harshly with the gravity of what viewers had just witnessed. Backstage, the atmosphere was thick with whispers and hurried footsteps. Crew members spoke in hushed tones, replaying the exchange in fragments, each version slightly different from the last. Freeman moved through it all with quiet composure, offering a polite nod here, a brief word there. There was no sense of a man storming out in anger, only someone choosing to step away rather than compromise himself. As he reached the corridor leading out of the studio, he paused briefly, resting a hand against the wall, as if grounding himself before continuing on. Inside the control room, producers debated how to handle the fallout even as the show rushed back from commercial. Stephanopoulos returned to his seat, posture straight, face carefully neutral. He addressed the audience with practiced steadiness, acknowledging an unexpected moment, and moving swiftly to the next segment. Yet something essential was missing. The warmth that typically defined the show felt diluted, replaced by a brittle politeness. Viewers at home flooded social media within minutes, clips circulating, opinions hardening almost instantly. Some praised Freeman's restraint and conviction, others questioned whether the clash had gone too far for a morning program. Outside the studio, Freeman emerged into the daylight, the noise of the city rushing back in. A small group of onlookers recognized him immediately, their reactions mixed, applause from a few, stunned silence from others. He offered a brief smile, neither triumphant nor bitter, and slipped into a waiting car. As it pulled away, the morning continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened, yet for those who had witnessed it, the moment lingered. Throughout the day, commentators dissected every second of the exchange. Was it a misunderstanding, a calculated risk gone wrong, or simply two strong perspectives colliding in a space not designed to hold them? Statements were drafted, carefully worded and deliberately vague. Behind closed doors, network executives weighed damage control against the undeniable surge in attention. Freeman, meanwhile, remained silent, declining interviews, letting the moment speak for itself. By evening, the narrative had grown larger than the show itself. It became a conversation about respect, about the limits of live television, about what happens when authenticity collides with format. For some, it was a cautionary tale. For others, a rare glimpse of honesty in a polished world. And for those who had been in that studio, the audience members, the crew, even Stephanopoulos, it remained something more intimate, the memory of a quiet, dignified exit that spoke louder than any argument ever could.